Are
Happy
you
to be
ready
here.
for today's conversation?
Yeah, this is interesting. You can't do anything without people, so let's fix it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right, you guys, listen, we have an assortment of special guests today. Of course, John Leno,
Yeah.
the great Mr. John Geno, who's here with me again as a co-host. We have Sean Lamb in the studio today, Sarah Slinton, Brian Cunningham, Paul Carter, all coming in to bring in their expertise and opinion as we get into the conversation this week as to where are all the techs going. And so we want to talk about this. We're going to be back in just a few seconds with you, and we're going to get into the conversation right away and introduce you to our guests. Stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. Donnie, you got it? Talk to you soon. All right, look at that. It's going wild. The crowd is wild. Hey, you guys, welcome everyone. Thank you for being here today. And for those of you who are joining and registered for this event, thank you again very much. We are very grateful that you're here. We want to take a quick second to thank our sponsor, Thread, who is actually sponsoring this event for you guys and bringing these guests to you. So we're excited to get into it. We'll get a few more things. Also, if you are watching right now, do us a favor, drop a hashtag live. If you're watching this later and you're not watching live and on a replay, let us know by dropping a hashtag replay. This just helps us let us know when you're actually watching, when you're not, and we understand how to do a better job at bringing this content. Involved, engage, be opening up questions to our. So with that, let's get into it right away. Let's start with a quick introduction of who you are and your history in the renewable energy business.
Sure. Yeah, welcome everybody. It's good to be here. So I started out on wind specifically in 2008 working with GE, and worked for GE as a trainer for about a year, and then moved to Nordex as a training manager. Did a lot of training in that role. I moved from Nordex to a college, and a 2-year program. And so I've graduated a lot of people into the industry, or helped graduate them. And then now I work for Danish Wind Academy for the last 8 years, and I run the U.S. North America division.
Oh, I love live. I love live. So listen, one of the reasons too that caught my attention, I was reading your articles quite a few years back, and seen your name around, and we have a lot of mutual friends in the industry, and we talked about that on the back end. But there was a particular article that you wrote in 2015 that we referenced, and I thought it was interesting, and we're going to get into that a little bit here in a minute. But again, I'm really grateful that you're here, and again, welcome to the program. I'm going to start with you, Paul Carter, the recruitment king, Mr. Beehive Live himself. Why don't you fill us in a little bit on your history?
I wouldn't say king anyway. So I joined renewables back in 20, but I had a composites background, and I worked in oil and gas, and I worked in aviation. And whilst working in renewables, along with Dave Reese, who's the principal founder at Beehive Live, we discovered problems that they've been there forever, an eternity in sourcing staff. So we decided to do something about it, and henceforth Beehive Live. So we're connecting companies and staff, because at the moment they're like ships in the night. The right people are missing the right positions, and we've come up with a bit of an intuitive situation where we can use software to match them up instantly.
I love it. Okay, well, awesome. Thank you for being Cunningham. You are.
Yeah, Rigo, thanks for having me. Brian Cunningham with Pronto Solution. I am the president. We have been in the industry since 2017 as a composite repair company. I started in the oil and gas service business, and I've since brought some of my knowledge from vegetation management over to Pronto Solutions. We started in 2017 with 4 employees, and right now we're sitting at 45 employees, mainly focusing on composite repair, but also doing the vegetation management in the renewable industry, solar farms, wind farms, but we also do some rail and some oil and gas as well.
Awesome. Thank you. And Sarah, I'm going to give you the opportunity.
Sure. Thank you, Rigo, for having me. I am a little bit different than the others here in the group in that, well, there's one very clear reason, but the other one is that I am VP of People and Culture here at Thread. And so I am not technically in the wind industry. I've actually only been near one wind turbine in my life, but I am all things people. So at Thread, we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources on making sure our employees are taken care of. And so I was invited to kind of speak to some of the things that we do at Thread for our employees.
Awesome. Thank you. And John, once again, back again for another episode with me. I don't know why you keep subjecting yourself to this pain, but
this is humor, Rigo. I love this stuff. This is great. So I came out of aerospace. 10 years as an aeronautical engineer down in Los Angeles, military, civilian, everything from submarines to spacecraft. And then came into wind 25-ish years ago, composites and wind, starting off with 9-meter blades. And then for 21 years was LM/GE, production engineering technical director up through to regional quality manager for the Americas. So from building to servicing them there in the field, I've been around blades for a while.
awesome. So we'll go ahead and get this popped off. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to jump in on who would like to be this. But what are you guys seeing, specifically those who are in the recruiting, the training, the hiring side? So we've got Brian as a small business owner, an ISP. Sean, you're a trainer, training the industry. And Paul, you're a recruiter for many different companies, working with techs and working with the industries hiring these techs. Which one of you guys would like to jump in and what you're seeing? Is it an exodus of technicians, or is it truly a lack of qualified technicians? Who would like to go first?
I'll start us off. I believe it's both, and you can't narrow it down to one, because obviously you're always going to get people join and you're always going to get people leave. So the problem is, in the middle of all that, like we spoke briefly, and you've got some people, a bit of a brain drain for people on the ground, because you have people that are getting promoted basically too quick, and they might jump 2 positions up and below those and expertise because they're not being guided correctly or not being trained on everything. So that's a little bit of an overall, I think.
Of those two, Paul, in your opinion, which one could we have an effect upon? Retention is one, but whether they're moving up or moving out.
With on top of that, with the growth of the industry, I think people moving out is the one that we need to concentrate on most at the moment. And because if the industry continues to grow as it is, and there's more people starting to move out because they're simply not, 1, they're talking about money, 2, they're talking about conditions, 3, they're talking about company culture. But the overall concern seems to be, with a lot of them, is the actual health and safety side of it, because it's nowhere near up to the standards like the oil and gas industry is.
Yeah, so a couple of challenges that we face at Pronto is we are a small business And so we're battling the larger corporations for pay and competitive pay. We are a travel company, so we're 100% travel, and guys don't always want to be gone 6 weeks at a time. And then we also we're composite, so we have a little bit of a seasonality issue as well, as Paul can maybe attest to. So those are some of the challenges that we face at Pronto, and still trying to navigate those at the moment.
Yeah, I think the season issue in most businesses is not the same as what it is in wind, I believe, especially for repairs, like you're saying, Brian, with blades, and John will, back me up on that one. Exactly. I mean, it's the seasonal issue happens for everybody for blades, and I suppose major swap outs as well for the wind techs that are involved in that. That's seasonal as well. You're not going to be doing that in the middle of winter, are you?
So on the business side of the equation, that's always a problem. What do you do during the off season with your high dollar service techs? Lesson learned: don't put them back into manufacturing. It's two different cultures of work style. That hasn't worked well in the past that I've seen anyway. So that's one question from the business side. But for the traveling technicians, 100% travel when they are working. How do you keep them engaged with the company? These guys are out there on their own, working all day, frequently sitting in the hotel room at night, entering their data in a report, etc. So I'm curious as to I think it was Paul, and Brian. Brian, how do you keep those guys engaged as part of the company?
Yeah, so one of the things that we do is a Friday call, and it's a safety and quality call, but we're also just getting updates and letting the guys interact together, letting us know, hey, what struggles are you facing? Tell us something funny that's happened this week, what near misses, what challenges. And so that helps some. Also, LinkedIn has been a very good tool. Just them interacting with our company page, and interacting together, and just the social media aspect that I've really never even thought about until about a year ago. And so we have really focused on culture, trying to find the ideal team member or the ideal Pronto team member. And then those guys enjoy working together. They joke around together, they have fun together, but then they also get things done.
That actually brings up something I'd like to get in with Sarah a bit. But you talked about creating a different culture and an environment in a competitive space, right, Brian? So Sarah, can you share with us a little? You had shared with us in our pre-call, but I found it interesting. You do the same with recruiting top talent and keeping good talent there within Thread, correct?
Yeah, our CEO has this vision that is, beyond what many of us can see. And he knew that we needed to really focus and put resources into our people, even before we had a giant company. So we're still pretty small. We're under 50 full-time employees, but yet we have invested heavily in the employees that we have, and our retention has been strong through that. We, like Brian said, we try to interact a lot through we're distributed across the country, right? And so we don't have a lot of people in the same location where, people can get together in person, but rather we do, utilize LinkedIn, other social media platforms. We use, tools within our company to help with interaction and engagement. I kind of drive a lot of the, more interaction socially. And it's great for us to have dedicated people to that, because if we didn't have that, there would be much less interaction between our employees, much less engagement, and potentially less satisfaction. And when you don't feel that you are part of a company, or you don't have that culture of support and that culture of caring, you're disengaged and you tend to look for other opportunities. So this is really helped with our retention, just to have somebody dedicated to, really, spurring these interactions.
So now this brings me over to you, Sean. You had shared something in the article that we talked about in Win Systems Magazine in 2015 in regards to a potential wave of a lack of skilled labor. Now, you mentioned over the last few years being in the thick of it. I mean, you're there. We're very fortunate to have you on the show today simply because there was somebody that got ill, and so everybody needs to be quarantined for a day or two to make sure that there's nothing spreading. But outside of that, you were literally on a site training,
supposed
right?
To be up tower, yeah. I was supposed to be up tower today.
Yeah.
But, so yeah, I'd consider myself on the front lines of the service side. In a past roles, I've been in the commissioning and maybe even construction side, helping train in the factory side. So I've been around training all those different aspects. And I really want to emphasize that, when you say wind workers, it's such a broad scope, right? So for example, I'm out here training service technicians, right? So the site's already turned over, out of warranty, self-performing, and I'm training a service provider to do work and do maintenance and troubleshooting. So that's kind of the end of the line. But at the beginning is, obviously the development phase and the kind of management putting it together. But there's also this phase of commissioners, construction workers, building the site out, right, and handing it over. And that can be just as big, if not bigger, as long as the wheel keeps turning, right, and we keep building new sites, and those people have constant jobs, right? So I can really only speak to right now, kind of the end of the line, the service technicians, the ones who maintain the turbines every day. And I am seeing both an exodus, which surprised me in the last couple of years. And I think COVID was an impetus for a lot of people to rethink their careers, right? But I also see there's always been a lack of qualified folks since I started 15 years ago. There's always kind of a tendency to take anybody that has a little experience, maybe as a manager, and worth their salt and promote them. And when you do that, with the growth that we're having, it's going to make a vacuum, and you're going to start pulling people in to take those places. And I really think a lot of times it's not well handpicked, some of the folks that grab and pull into these positions. And so, not to cut on initial workers, but your story of you were telling me about just being handed the keys to a site. There has to be a little bit more forethought in how we bring in qualified people, right?
A lot more. Yeah. That's an experience that I'm grateful for, but I'm grateful for because nobody got hurt. Right? I mean, that could have been a completely different story. That could have been here are the keys to the site, don't kill yourself. And somebody got seriously. And so, yeah, we can joke about it. Those who have been in the industry, 14, 15, 16 years, 17 years, 20 plus years, all kinds of crazy stories that we can talk about, especially for those who have entered in the last few years. But, I'm hearing a trend, and we're seeing some things in the news. There was a large announcement yesterday as we're seeing financial crises start to hit organizations like Siemens Gamesa, Investis, and GE as they're publicly traded and announcing their profits, which are none, and there's losses happening. So now we've got changes happening to organizations like that are the largest manufacturers providing these turbines for operators and owners, and where our guys are working in. So when you look at some instability in the industry, like, how do we expect that to not have a negative effect on where technicians are feeling that there's a future for them?
Well, that's an interesting comment added right onto the tail end of Sean's, and that is that we're promoting people into, call it, non-productive positions who were making money for the company. Now we stick them up in an office overseeing the field staff. And on the one hand, that might not be the best business case for you. There's actually, over the last decade plus out of IT industry, they've realized, looking at their data, that some of the worst things to do for a project and a project team is to promote the engineers to management. Let the engineers take off on a separate technical growth path, but get your liberal arts people in to be managers. Get people in to be managers. The team performs much better. You're much more effective. Your guys in the field are more efficient when they're not being directed by an engineer. So there's two thoughts in there. One is you need to provide a path of growth for the career of the field techs. What could they aspire to be to keep them interested in staying? And then two, put the right people in charge of handling the people that know how to handle people. Put Sarah in charge of handling.
Yeah, I was about to say that's a really good comment. Putting have Sarah's as managers.
There's a note from the public here from Dave. Train your staff so they can leave.
I want to add on to that though, John. So the idea of having people that are people in charge, definitely to have those people skills. The one thing that good leaders have is empathy. We talk a lot about empathy, but to truly have empathy, you do have to have a background on what the people you're managing are doing, right? So you can't bring in essentially somebody who doesn't know anything about being a tech to be a leader, but you can definitely have in some capacity somebody that is a people person, but yet can have that empathy, because it's such an important quality for a manager.
So Sarah, when the technician calls me from the field and says, hey, the project's supposed to be done next week, my grandma's in the hospital, I really want to go spend some time with her, my response should not be, can you finish the job first? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, and empathy. I mean, talking about like empathy of the field too. So there are things that you guys as technicians have experienced and that I haven't. And so when I speak to pilots, I can have empathy about personal things and about things that I have had experience with. But I have a tough time being able to empathize with things that I don't fully understand. And so there's empathy kind of across the board.
There's another situation there as well, which is currently happening in the industry with management, that some managers are so stretched that the techs or the site managers, they can't get hold of them anyway. So because they're so stretched and they're having to do so much. So it's like a form of ghosting. And then there's the other type of manager that just won't leave you alone, and he's micromanaging, and everybody's getting brassed off with that and don't want to know. And that can lead to the two situations: no support, or someone's on top of me, I don't need the hassle.
But that goes to the comment that we were just saying here that John, you made, is really getting people in as managers, because one of the things that I remember and I think I did is best of a job as I could under the circumstances, but there was many different times with different organizations that I was put into a leadership role, and as much as I aspired to want to lead, I didn't have the proper training or understanding or etiquette. I've been in the field for 15 years prior to getting into renewable energy in 2007, 2008. I grew up in an industrial background. My level of managing and encouraging had a lot of verbiage and special words of encouragement, right? These are not the kind that I can say publicly. That's how you encouraged. You encouraged with emphasis and energy. And I'm going to crawl up where to get you to do this, because I didn't have business being in that role. And so it was what I wanted and I aspired. But this goes to a whole nother area that I believe in industry today, we are just absolutely lacking internal training and building of leaders and mentors. We talk about this all the time. I think there's a huge need. In fact, we had this conversation sometime back. We had Jeff Walkup that was on in our weekly podcast that we did, and he had talked about that as well. And, there needs to be more individuals that are out there really with that passion. But here's the reality. So many of us move from company to company today because that is how today's industry works. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's very few left where someone's going to spend 20, 25, 30, 35 years, which means you don't have that level of leadership. So going to your comment, Paul, and you're talking about technicians that are frustrated with their manager. Their manager's probably frustrated with themselves and frustrated with the company that they're working for because they want to do more, they want to do better. But the truth is they really aren't properly trained, qualified, or even adequately supported. And I think this goes back to people being in positions of managing, not so much the technical management, but the people management. And I think really maybe we're not separating that, and that's a cause and effect issue. Sean, I know, Paul, you're going to say something, so I want to hear it. But Sean, I'd like to come back to you on this. I want to see, is this anywhere close? Are you seeing that as you go out for training? And Brian, are you seeing that in your own organization as well? But we'll go to you first, Paul.
Going back a few years, then you had certain managers that would actually go out and do site visits. Now, you probably, now because we're in a more sort of technical world, and like it was spoke about earlier, Brian was speaking about, we do a Friday morning call, it's all online. Now, there's one or two companies out there that I know that are doing, I think it's more of a hands-on approach where somebody is actually going to visit them. Now, if you've got a site that's having issues and nobody visits them and it's just an online call, the people on the ground, if they physically see somebody turn up and go, right, what's the problem? How can we help? What are we doing? I know there's a cost involvement there, but when you're a leader and you lead from the front and you're actually there where the problem is 300 or 400 miles away or whatever it is, then, there's a better response. There's a better team response.
Yeah. So it goes back to how the technicians, I can speak for a lot of the service technicians, how they work. They work alone. They might not see their manager but for half an hour a day, right, during the morning meetings. And, it goes back to what is integrity, right? It's doing the right thing when no one's watching. And it's a lot different than factory world. I think a lot of I've been part of companies where they focus on factory kind of setups and management structures, and they try and evolve that into the field. And it's just a different animal out there in the field, as some of you guys know. So I wrote down a quick list of things that I feel are, key root causes for some of what we're seeing as far as the exodus or the hopping jobs. Things I've seen is just work-life balance, like you mentioned, not being there. It may be remote locations. If there's an expression, if mama ain't happy, nobody happy, right? So you got to have your family have decent access to malls and things that that you want in the area, which does occur. But then usually if it is in like Amarillo or something where it's close by a city center, then there's also more options to hop, right? So to leave the industry. So I've seen that. I've seen things where people just get injured, even small back injuries, if you're climbing over and over, turn into, unbearable and leave the industry. The newest trend towards fixing or mitigating that, I guess, is the new 3S lifts that I'm seeing, or any kind of lifts where it takes a lot more physical load off the techs. So right away, you've lowered your churn. And then I think, going back to people, developing people in their careers, the techs want to see a development path. If they don't see a development path, they'll find another way out. Of course, the pay has to be competitive. And I've also, I can see another article brewing in my head, but, just from what I've seen over the last, since I wrote that article, but, I've seen people literally with the title commodity management. And I just never thought I'd heard that title. It goes exactly opposite of what I'm trying to do with this industry, which is raise people up in their careers, right? And so there's this commoditization of the technicians, which I think is very dangerous because they're the ones who touch the turbines. So you can engineer all you want, but the turbine's only as good as the last person who left it, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And on that note, sorry, Rigo. On that note, I think also as well, you have good technicians and you have bad technicians. But at the end of the day, they all deserve the same amount of like contact with the management team. They all deserve the same amount of support. But the bad ones, you obviously need to support them better. So when that comes back to company culture again, and the right people management in the right places, and yes, there needs to be some sort of amount of expertise to understand where the technicians are going wrong. But I think most leaders, and Rigo, you've led front and you've shown people what to do and lead by example. So that's the thing that's actually missing with a lot of they're not being example. They're actually just being left to it, shorthanded on sites, and also as well lack of supply chain when it comes to parts, or it comes to equipment, or it comes whatever it is. And that again goes back to company culture. But it's a very negative thing to say, but don't get me wrong, there's people out there we know are doing an absolutely brilliant job, and I've got to name him. The stuff that I see from Josh Rangel from Rangel Renewables, and I'm starting to see it as well from your company, Brian, as well. The posts that you're putting out about the people, about the staff and everything is excellent. So there is really good companies out there, and hopefully, instead of me just naming 2 right off the bat, in a year's time we can turn around and name 5, we can name 10. If the culture changes, it's got to start somewhere, and if it don't start doing something now, we already know it's starting to fail as an industry, and maybe 5 years down the line it'll be even worse if nothing's done about it.
I'll add just that I've seen it in my 15 years. I've seen it ebb and flow, right? I've seen some real pushes for culture, pay, production bonuses, training, and then I've seen it at times get really lean and get really thin, and a kind of a push towards people are expendable, and maybe you can attest to that as well. But I've seen that come and go over the years.
When the pool for labor is deep, then the fix for the bad tech is just get them out of the field. But that's pretty interesting comment there, Paul. And Brian, what do you do with your bad techs? You're looking to replace them, or you're investing in them?
Right. Yeah. I think we're trying to find a good balance there. I mean, one, we don't want guys to poison the culture, but at the same time, what we've done here recently is have some pretty direct conversations with those technicians. I think it's very easy for us to ignore the problem and hope it goes away, but that problem continues to fester. And so if we can jump on those crucial conversations, right from the start, then we can address some of that, maybe ease everybody's frustrations. I mean, some of it is having the emotional intelligence to figure out what the real problem is. Sometimes it's something simple that the tech is upset with, and if you can figure that out in a short time manner, then he is that good tech that you've been looking for. So
real quick before we
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, real quick. I just want to take a second because I want to thank our sponsor again. So Thread for being a part of this and supporting us as we're getting this content out to you. We hope you're finding value in it. We just want to let you know right now companies are struggling with inspection, and inspections are time consuming, expensive. They can be dangerous. Other robotic collection methods are manual, visual based, and overwhelming organizations with data. So Thread addresses this with a push of a button. Robotics, they call it push button technology. Automated, intelligent data collection with inspection insights ready for analysis review. So if you're looking for a better approach to inspections and inspecting assets, interested in bringing drone or robotics programs Thread is the leader in enterprise scale data collection for all your inspection needs. See how cool that was? Easy, done. Thank you, Thread, for sponsoring this. We really do appreciate it. So anyways, okay, I want to get back to the conversation at hand, but I am grateful for what they're doing. And what we're doing here, we're trying to create an environment, you guys, where we're having open conversation that isn't being supported by a biased position. And I am not in any way going to put down any organization that is out there trying to educate or expose our industry in a way that allows us to connect and become better. But there are a lot of conversations that I believe need to happen, and I'm glad that you guys are here, and I want to do more of this. But I want to ask these questions, like to you, Brian, as an example of a small business owner in America. Not only do you make up and consume most of how we produce our GDP as a country, but you represent the actual element of who's doing the work. We all know that even within the OEMs, most of their contracts are maintained by small businesses and small business owners and technicians working small businesses. So as a small business, what are the challenges that you're facing? What are you seeing? Because you know, what do you have to fight in order to maintain these technicians, whether it's training, whether it's pay? I mean, what is your challenge? Like, let's hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Yeah, I would say the first is pay. I mean, so we have large corporations that are taking a loss. As a small business owner, we can't do that, and so we are fighting for competitive pay. And that doesn't always work out for us. So we have to make up for it in other ways with some better R&R schedules or culture, growth opportunities. But the other thing that we battle with as a small business owner would be the training. So you know, we're bringing all of that in-house. Looking at becoming a GWO facility, just because we can't spend $10,000 on every single employee to do all of that, or the extensive blade training. So we bring in the experience and try and disperse that blade knowledge to all of our techs.
And so, you know, Sean, when you're out there training, are you seeing this as a trend as well from sites or organizations or small businesses like Brian?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wrote down a whole spectrum here of different, if I were a worker, you know, doing service, what companies could I work for? You know, the scale ranges from utilities to IPPs, OEMs, OEM multi-brands, full wrap ISPs, and then manpower ISPs. And in that range, that scale, I'd say the utilities have kind of the longest term picture, whereas, you know, manpower ISPs might be, I need 2 guys to paint a bridge on Thursday between 1 and 4, right? And I've seen those kind of contracts get signed. And, you know, so I do think that the billable hours runs the day, you know, rules the day on manpower ISPs, and I've seen that personally. But it's not the whole industry, right? Again, there's so many facets and so many workers that we're talking about. But just to tune into, like you said, the OEMs use smaller companies for subcontract out on site to do services. I think in that space, it depends, you know, what kind of company you're dealing with. If it's one that can rotate around and keep somebody employed instead of just benching them, then their retention's obviously higher. You know, I was part of a company that couldn't find people and was turning down contracts because there was so much need and demand, but we just couldn't pull in the folks when we needed them. And you look back 2 months and we had just laid off dozens and dozens of people because the contract wasn't there. So it all comes back to billable hours, right? For those companies. Yeah. So I understand what you're saying there, Brian.
That's exactly right.
I'm feeling the pain just from a little different angle. But as a go ahead, Sarah. In fact, I was actually headed your way, so good.
I actually want to follow up on something Brian said, because as a small business owner, yeah, you are up against bigger companies that probably have a larger budget to put towards salary. And so you might be at a disadvantage there. And oftentimes, everybody thinks it is about pay. Now, pay is very important. We all know everybody has basic needs. They have things that they have to cover. And so, yes, market rate, fair compensation is vitally important to retaining and recruiting in employees. But the actual number one reason, and this has been proven or shown through many different studies, the number one reason people actually leave their job is because of lack of appreciation. And if appreciation can be made more often and real true appreciation, that can actually help with maybe not having a salary as high as another competitor. And when somebody truly feels appreciated within their company, that's going to make them want to stay because they feel like they're truly part of it. So I just want to say that if you can, there's a lot of different things you can add in to compensate for a lower salary, and appreciation and recognition is one of them.
I think that's a good
Sarah,
comment.
a smart guy once told me that the important name to know at the company is the name of the janitor. You start at the bottom. And when I was out traveling and visiting the teams in the field, I show up on site and the team lead wants to come talk to me. I don't want to talk to you. I talk to you every day, several times a day on the phone. I want to talk to the guy over there with the grinder. That's where you find out the true story of what's going on. That's where you can identify your good techs and your bad techs, and get that face to face and show some appreciation. Hey, thanks for doing this. It's a nasty hot day in Texas and it's dusty and it's itchy, but thanks for doing this. That goes a long way. There's a couple of comments here from the listeners. Attitude over skill every day of the week. And so, Sarah, I want to throw it back over to you. When you hire someone, and perhaps Brian as well, are you testing for attitude? How can you go through the pile of potentials and pick out the ones that might have the attitude and the values you need?
Yeah, we actually do. So we hire highly technical individuals in the robotics, in the computer science, software development kind of space. And so we definitely need the skills, right? So we do ask a variety of questions aimed at assessing their skill level. But the individuals that we hire also have the attitude that we're looking for, even if they might not have the skills as high as somebody else, but that other person was a jerk, or at least looked like they were going to be a jerk or difficult to work with. We will always hire the other side, because it is so much better to have somebody who is a better fit for the team because of the way that they carry themselves in the interview, the way that we ask questions that are aimed at culture, as best as we can. And we try to assess for that in every interview we do.
Yeah, I love the book, The Ideal Team Member, that talks about the humble, smart, and hungry attributes. And so we definitely try and target those as well. The other thing that we've had success with is if we can find guys that our guys want to work with, then we can create a crew chemistry that is unbeatable for efficiency and safety, because guys are looking out for each other. They want to get the job done. They work well together. They communicate well together. And so if we can spend our time finding who's going to mesh with what lead, or what lead is able to bring somebody to the next level, it really has paid dividends for us.
And then I think that goes back to some of the Go ahead, Paul. Paul's all the way in Ireland, by the way.
Beehive Live,
they love the step. They love delays, and they love stepping over you.
Exactly that.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm done. Go ahead.
Right, hang on. Somebody get the guy gag. Yeah, you like working with somebody, so why not? Specifically on the contracting side, we've decided that we're going to build into our platform if you know that you're looking for a team of 4 people and they work well together, then you can come and find them as a team of 4 people. Because these guys, you're not going to work with people that are, you're not going to have 3 guys that work, really well together, and then 1 guy who's part of the team that's, a complete arsehole. So that just simply won't happen. So if you've got 4 guys that are prepared to put themselves out there and they're prepared to put themselves as a team and they're available for your project, hire the lot of them. And that's what we're going to do that. So I think that's going to be beneficial to the industry. That will.
You actually bring up something that was said to me from another individual that I was speaking with who has been in this industry a long time, who has technicians in the field, owns a small business, and made the same comment. Sarah, you may be able to speak to this, Brian as well, but that's another great point. If we've got technicians that are out, let's say they're out 5, 6, 7 weeks at a time, and maybe they're spending a week of R&R. The reality is that 80% minimum of the time that they're out on the field, they are having to create their own version of the culture. I mean, this is a challenge that we're having in organizations, working with individuals to work from home or be remote, and this hybrid aspect. So this brings up another good point. As we're out there working with individuals, this group really, they have to create their own environment. Do you think that possibly this is some of the effects that are happening, the play that's happening in terms of, of a change of why maybe people are leaving? And let me go back to an experience. For quite a few years, I was working at being a part of wind farms being built. And when you're in that, it is a completely different environment. There are so many people that show up. It's like the contractors and the companies that are building, it's almost like they build a satellite company there. And there's so many individuals representing that general contractor, that main group. During that period when you're building these sites, there isn't a lack of culture coming from whoever that company is. And that doesn't necessarily exist when, Brian, you're sending out a crew or 2 to go out and do blade work. Like, if these guys are constantly out on their own, if you're not connecting with them, they're going to start creating their own culture, right? And that could be a negative culture. That could go the wrong way. What loyalty do they have when they're only seeing their head office, maybe once or twice a quarter?
Yeah, no doubt. And so I think we have to find a good way to monitor and measure, is their standard to our standard? And, that's something that we're still working on every single day. Just to find a way to monitor and measure, is their reality matching up to our reality?
So as you're out there seeking today, and I've heard this from quite a few, but is the pool of qualified laborers? Like, do you have enough people to choose from?
Right now, it's November, so yes. Come May, no way. They're.
Oh, that's a good point, right? We work in a seasonal industry, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one type of, like I said, job is the seasonal manpower. Blade repair obviously is seasonal. A lot of the major correctives, like you said, are seasonal. But being on a IPP self-performer, for example, that's not seasonal. They're there year round, right? And they'll take they'll take the challenge of the weather and go out and fix the turbines. It's not seasonal. So there's quite a few different things. I'm always trying to step back, right, and look kind of big picture, and the feeding the industry with qualified candidates. So we got to identify what that means. And, when I was at the colleges and I was on the advisory boards of the colleges, a couple little ones, because when I was with the OEMs, because I wanted to steer them. I wanted to steer, what the curriculum should look like. I always thought, this perfect world, bring them in, teach them for, 2 years, teach them all these different computer skills, teach them all these different mechatronic skills, build them up so that they can get a job, not just in wind swapping parts, but they can get a job in wind, and be really successful. If I were put into the position of an operations manager, I think I'd have a different viewpoint, right? And that viewpoint would be hire local, because they're tied into the community and they probably have less chance of leaving. And then, like someone put, you hire attitude, hire the right people, and then you train them. And the other caveat to that is most of the jobs don't get posted, right? They get called around to friends. And so when one good person goes to a company, he'll pull in several others with them, and they kind of make that team right there. That's always part of it, right? And so I mean, I've seen where recruiters will just use the 2-button method, right? LinkedIn, Indeed, LinkedIn, Indeed, and they just keep pressing these 2 buttons. And then, so, hey, we got this project starting, we really need some people immediately, and they just start pressing it harder and faster. And I'm like, there's got to be other ways. So, when I started with the schools, there was a lot more schools, right? And they were feeding the industry. A lot of those private schools have gone under because of accreditation problems, government level. But, I think, is there a bunch of qualified technicians sitting around? Maybe after the GE layoffs. Yeah, there probably is. But go back, just a few months ago or a month ago, and that wasn't the case. I know one company that was actually signing work visas on the South Texas border for Mexican nationals to come in because they could not find qualified workers down there. Again, that to me is more of location, right, than it is anything. But no, I don't think we have. I think we may have a small boost because of some layoffs that just recently happened, but I don't think we're in good shape for the next years to come at all.
No, I have to agree with you just based on the trends and what we've been seeing. And I think something notable here that we should mention, we really should understand that there is a massive difference in identifying on-site personnel who live local, go to sleep in their bed every night, who get to go to the wind farm versus the majority of the work that's being done by traveling technicians. And I think that really those really need to be addressed. And even as we're going through this conversation, I myself found myself doing the exact thing that I'm mentioning here, which is we're talking in generalization and making an assumption that we're just talking about all wind techs in general. And you know what? On-site personnel is not the same. There is a completely different aspect of all things there. There is a cultural set. There is on-site training. There's individuals like I ran wind farms for quite a few years. We rarely lost anybody. And when we did, we typically didn't have to replace because the team, a working environment and they understood how to support each other. So if somebody left, we just continued on unless we absolutely need to bring another individual on. But today I've noticed. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think going back to Sean's comments there and a bit about what you've just said also, I guarantee if a company came to me in the middle of the summer, so-called height of the season, and they were looking for somebody, I could have found them somebody, because pressing the button on LinkedIn and pressing the button on Indeed is, Rigo, is one of the reasons for our company, because we've given the companies the ability to have direct source instant contact with the technicians. Now, if you've got technicians that are, just throwing out adverts there, it's like fishing. It's like throwing a rod into the pond and hoping for a good catch. Now, we've designed a system where it's like walking into, a pet store. You look at the aquarium side of things and goes, oh, I'm having that fish. It's just like that. So it's very, very we need to use more technology to source personnel, and we need to use it so it's instant sourcing. So that's what we've done. And I think at the moment it's in its infancy, this whole solution to, you know, how can we keep Wintex there? And I don't know what the final answer is, and I'll be honest with you. But, you know, if it isn't spoken about and not talked about, then there won't be a solution found, or there won't be a solution, you know, for the industry in general. And we will end up in a situation where there will be wind turbines sitting idle, more and more of them, if they're building them in such a, you know, fast rate.
And I think that gets into a different conversation that I did the best I could not to open, because I want to really bad, but I don't really have the knowledge to speak on it. But you guys can go do the research for yourself and just do a little financial search on how the OEMs are doing right now. But that raises a lot of question, which is, are they going to be around over the next few years to take care of these turbines? And you look at, you know, from an owner operator perspective, you know, they aren't paying as much as they should in comparison to another industry. We take that same skill set, a millwright or electrician, or you know, the skills that these technicians have to learn from hydraulic to electrical, mechanical, and you take that level of skill set, you go to another industry and they're making a lot more. But those service providers are also charging a lot more, and the people paying these bills are willing to pay a lot more because they're making a lot more. So if we follow this chain all the way up as an industry, are we just not creating enough revenue from an energy producing side? Are we not making enough money there where that's transferred down the line? And so everybody's wanting cheaper and cheaper. Or are we just become so accustomed to it that nobody's standing firm, right? And then every couple of years we have another big investment that comes in and buys everybody out, and they've got all this equity money and they can just undercut and underbid everybody. I've been in the industry 15 plus years and I've seen this happen 3 times. So I wonder, like, are we damaging the industry? Are we the fault to it? Like, we're looking at how do we make change, but how many of us are actually playing a part in making these mistakes and screwing it up, right? And then we have organizations like Thread and Pronto and groups like this that are out there working to solve problems. And then how do we create and attract talent, retain and keep talent, and also not go out of business at the same time, right? I would love to pay my employee more than I can, but as a small business, I can only support so much, right? And it's like, well, just go get money. It's not that easy, right? So you look at this. I think there's a lot that's out there, but I want to give each of you an opportunity for a final word and come into this, because I don't solve here today. Hoping some of this conversation has sparked some thought and at least looking at where can we improvement, because I think that we have to do something, even if it's small, making a better opportunity for our employees to be able to communicate and connect with us as owners or our leaders, so that they can feel more appreciative. Sarah, you said something simple. It doesn't be, but it does need to be authentic, right? So I want to give you guys. We'll go ahead and start with you.
Yeah, I think for me, what I'd like to focus on is just giving employees good direction, give them adequate reviews to where they do feel like I am approachable, that their managers are approachable, and that we can have those difficult conversations when we need to, and be very, just share the trust. And then the other thing would be just to involve them more, give them a path of growth, and show them that their opinion matters, so that they want their buddies to come work with us, and they want to be a part of something that's bigger than any one person.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. John, my great co-host, what are your thoughts on today's program?
If you're listening and reading some of the text coming back from the listening audience to the upper management, if you're chronically having churn among your technicians, start with your supervisors and your management team. Something's wrong right there. You're not recognizing what the issue is, because we've heard some solutions here today.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it. Sean.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the company culture being a huge retention tool, and I would want to work for a good group of folks that have my back and take care of me, and you can. To me, it's about seeing the future, right? So if you can set a career path and set expectations clearly, which a lot of companies struggle with, right? Then I think people will stick around and they'll give you their all in order to, even if they're not getting paid top dollar today, as long as they have somewhere to go in the future, I think it would really benefit them. Yeah.
Appreciate it. Paul, we'll go ahead and bring it over to you.
I think, like I said earlier, I don't think there is an overall answer at the moment, but I'd like to see from the ground up, I'd like to see more apprenticeships, and somebody mentioned it there, vertical growth is paramount, as one of the LinkedIn users mentioned. I'd like to see apprenticeships, skilled techs, and then you go up to master tech as well, and I think that needs to be with the electrical mechanical technicians, and it needs to be as well on the blade front as well, because at the moment there is no, people can do stage 1 repairs, or they can do stage 2 repairs, but there's not a lot of people around. Even when I was doing major, there's not a lot of people around to do even stage 5 repairs. And if your blades aren't working, then your turbine's not earning revenue.
Listen, John already had his 2 cents, so don't get John started again on this one. But thanks, Paul. I appreciate it. And Sarah, I'm really quite impressed at the things you're doing at Thread, and the way you're engaging with your employees in front of the rest of the world, social and behind the scenes, which I think is awesome, because there's a lot of just you guys, and you keep that internal, but you're always engaged them. What can you offer here as we're kind of closing up? Anything you can our listeners with from what you're seeing that's working for you, they can implement for themselves?
Sure. So I can say that, culture is thrown around a lot, where it's like we want to have a good work culture and we need to foster a good work culture. But culture is purely organic, and it's always going to be driven by the management and how the management interacts and treats their direct reports. And so even if as a company you can't have somebody that's in a role dedicated to people and dedicated to culture, you can still have mentorship training, you can still have management training for managers or for anybody that's going to be supervising people, and fostering this culture of appreciation. And that's going to go a long ways, and it's going to cost nothing to tell somebody that you appreciate what they've done. Be specific, be quick with it, and make sure that if people want to hear it publicly, make sure it's done publicly.
I love it. Okay, well, thank you, all of our guests. We appreciate it. We're a little bit over. For those of you guys who joined us today, thank you so much. We appreciate you being part of the conversation. I want to thank Thread again, our sponsor, for putting this on and allowing us to open up this conversation, you guys, and getting your thoughts and perspective on it. You guys, we're grateful for all of your support, and hopefully you did find value in this. If you have not connected with our guests, please do so. We would love for you to connect with them and ask more questions. There's lots of great stuff in the comments. Get engaged there. Let's keep this conversation going and seeing if we can make some positive change ourselves and continue moving forward. So, all right, you guys, God bless. I'm grateful for you being here again, and we will see you next month on our next Real Talk episode. Until then, take care of yourself, and I will talk to you soon.